Hey, good day, everybody. Welcome back to another episode live from Jerusalem with my rabbi, Rabbi Chaim Goldberg of the Noahide World Center, and this is his Genesis class. And we've also been continuing with Lee Fogel doing Brit, Shalom, Rabbi Yuri Shirky's book on practical applications for Noahides. It's a beautiful time to get together. We're joined in the Zoom room by many people from around the planet. It's always a joy to be with people all over the globe, and even with you folks out on YouTube and Facebook and all the social media channels. So let's just jump right into Rabbi Goldberg and see how he's doing. Rabbi Goldberg, always a pleasure to be with you and hear the Torah come out of the nation of Israel. It's your class, sir. You're live.
Good evening, everybody from Israel. Good to see you. Good to hear from you. Hope everything is okay with this COVID-19. My parents are doing much better. Thank God. But we will speak about this in another time. I hope that another 2-3 weeks you will manage to see them again with us. Hope everybody is okay. I want to start with a few things that people asked along this week. One of them, first of all, you're challenging us, and I'm really happy for that, because we have a site with a lot of questions and answers, but every time it's a live thing and everything else. So every time we're finding that there are new questions. For example, the Vor question of Michaela was a very challenging one. I won't say here the solution, but if someone have any question about a sword that he did in the time that he was, I don't say, I'm not allowed to say it, that he believed in Jesus and he swore with his name or something. So come to us on a personal level and we'll explain to you what to do and how to go out from it. But this is challenging. Another one asked me this week about the Hebrew people who went out from Egypt. Now, not only the Hebrew people who went out from Egypt, we know that a lot of Egyptians followed this Moses and the Hebrew people. It's written down even in the Bible. If you read it, the Bible, you will see that sometimes it's mentioning the Israelite people, and sometimes it's mentioning the crowds that went up with them. And it's also said in one of the verses. We need to know those people are the people that were very fascinated for Moses. They were not, he was the biggest magician in the area. And people were very fascinated with him. They said, this is the true thing. And some of them went out with the Hebrew people. They were not the firstborn people that died in Egypt. They were not, I don't know how to say it. People who were very fascinated and saw that the Hebrew people are going out, and they decided to join them. It also brought us few problems later on. On the other side, we need to remember, and I said this yesterday when we spoke about the Parsha, that we are not getting the Torah or those 10 commandments only for ourselves. We're getting it basically also for the whole world. And it's written down, now we're going to share things, it's written down very clear and loud in our Parsha, in the last Parsha that we read, okay? Yes, here it is. I'm reading from Exodus 19, that it's the Parsha of Jethro. And it says here that, please read verse number 6.
Verse 6, and you shall be to me a kingdom of princes and a holy nation. These are the words that you shall speak to the children of Israel.
Okay, so you can't be a kingdom of princes and the holy nation only for yourself. Mainly, you know what? We need to read also verse number 5. Sorry, please read verse number 5.
5, and now, if you obey me and keep my covenant, you shall be to me a treasure out of all peoples, for mine is the entire earth.
Okay, it's very important to see. For mine is the entire earth. I have all the earth, all the people. You're going to be a treasure, but for what? You're going to be a treasure because you're going to be the holy nation that is going to teach the others. So it's not that we got the Bible or the 10 Commandments in the next chapter only for ourselves. We got it for the whole people of the world. We are supposed to give it, okay, to send it to others, to show it to others, to show the way to us, to others. And this is the main thing that we need to realize with this thing of the Ten Commandments. There is a hint, okay? Since we went out from Egypt 4,000 years ago, in Hebrew we say that the Egyptians went out, Yetziat Mitzrayim. Now the question is, it's not true. Who went out from Egypt? The Hebrew people. So why are we calling it this? The Egyptians going out. Yetziat Mitzrayim, the meaning of the words Yetziat Mitzrayim, that the Egyptians went out from Egypt. It's not true. But we want to remind ourselves all the time that we a bit failed in the time that we went out from Egypt, because only small group of people from Egypt went out with us. But we were supposed to take all of the nations with us towards the connection with God. And we didn't do that then. We're doing this today. I want to show also another very important thing here in the verses. We are preparing ourselves in chapter 19. We are preparing ourselves that God is going to speak with the Hebrew people. And I want to show for a moment. Please read verse number 11.
11, and they shall be prepared for the third day. For on the third day the Lord will descend before the eyes of all the people on Mount Sinai.
Okay, and it says here like that, Yered Hashem. God is going to appear, okay, in front. He's going to go down from heaven and to show himself in front of all the people upon Mount Sinai. Fine. And it's also what's happening. Let's go up. Let's go on. Continue on a bit more. That please read verse 16.
16. It came to pass on the third day when it was morning that there were thunderclaps and lightning flashes, and a thick cloud was upon the mountain, and a very powerful blast of a shofar, and the entire nation that was in the camp shuddered.
Okay, they were shuddered. This is how God is starting to appear in front of the people. And this is why Moses, verse number 17, please read verse number 17.
17. Moses brought the people out toward God from the camp, and they stood at the bottom of the mountain.
Fine. So now we have that they didn't even have the guts of going by themselves. Moses took them out. He called them, all of them, and told them, come out, go out, because God is going to speak with us. And it says also in verse number 19, please read the verse number 19.
19. The sound of the shofar grew increasingly stronger. Moses would speak, and God would answer him with a voice.
Fine. And how do we call this appearance of God? Please read verse number 20.
20. The Lord descended upon Mount Sinai to the peak of the mountain, and the Lord summoned Moses to the peak of the mountain, and Moses ascended.
The word Vayered Hashem, again, you see, Vayered Hashem, he came down from heaven to us. The Lord descends upon Mount Sinai. Okay, this is how they're translating this word here. It's very important to see for a moment how the Hebrew people are showing or expressing their feeling for this thing. The next chapter is the Ten Commandments. And at the end of it, you can see it here. I'm the Lord God who took you out from Egypt. And then it says, one of the things that I said also, remember the Sabbath, the day of that, remember the Sabbath and everything else. Those are the Ten Commandments. Fine, but it's very important to see please read verses.
I'm sorry, Rabbi, which verse?
Verses 15 to 18.
15. And all the peoples saw the voices and the torches, the sound of the shofar and the smoking mountain, and the people saw and trembled. So they stood from afar. They said to Moses, you speak with us, and we will hear. But let God not speak with us, lest we die. But Moses said to the people, fear not, for God has come in order to exalt you, and in order that his awe shall be upon your faces, so that you shall not sin. The people remained far off, but Moses drew nearer to the opaque darkness where God was.
Fine. So we hear here in verse number 16 that the people of the Hebrew people, when God appeared in front of them with the words Vayered Hashem, they were afraid that they're going to die. Verse number 16. It's clear, it's written down. I'm not inventing anything. When God is appearing in front of men, he might feel the Almighty, the God who created this universe, is suddenly speaking with someone. The natural thing is that he wants to get connected with God, and that's it. I don't want to live here anymore. I want to be with God. We must die. We might die. Okay? And God and Moses is telling them, don't be afraid. God doesn't want to kill you, doesn't want that you will go to God. God wants something else. He wants you to have a mission in this place. Now I'm doing all of this as an opening to the verse 5 in Genesis, where we are, okay? When we're starting to see that the people decided to do the town, the Babylon town, and they tried to build up a very big mountain, okay, instead of the mountain. And I want you to read for a moment verse number 5.
Verse 5, and the Lord descended to see the city and the tower that the sons of man had built.
Vayered Hashem, the same word, you see? You see the same words? All of you can see that? It's exactly the same words. God is appearing in front of the people who are doing this big town and this big tower in front of God, opposing God. And when God is appearing, descendants in front of people, what is happening? Usually what is happening? People are afraid that they might die.
Oh, this is huge.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. It's exactly the same thing. You need to know what happened here. This is, I will say, some sort, once upon a time, 50 years ago, we had to do a picture, okay, before the pixels and all of those things. To do a picture, we had a negative. You remember that?
Yes. I had a dark room, yes.
Yeah, the dark room with the negative and everything else. Now, this negative that I know in the Polaroid, they managed to do it very fast, but usually we have the negative. And on this negative, you had the picture, but you had it in a very interesting way, so you can take it out as a picture after that.
It was a shadow picture.
Shadow picture, exactly.
Inverted,
Here we see, in this situation, some sort of a shadow picture of God appearing in front of people. Now, he is not going to kill them like he did in the flood. He's going to spread them over. But this is more or less the shadow of, I will say, the negative, okay? How do you call it the negative, if I remember correctly, okay, right? How do you call this the strip of the film? The negative of God appearing in front of people. It's the first time that God is trying to give some sort of the Bible. But people here are so afraid, and we spoke about this, that Nimrod was doing things against God, so they can't speak with Moses, Nimrod, in those days, to say to him, please speak with God that he won't kill us. The only way that they can live for that is to spread over, to run away. This is what's happening.
Wow.
This is what's happening. Read verse number 6, 7, and 8.
6, and the Lord said, lo, they are one people, and they have one language, and this is what they have commenced to do. Now will it not be withheld from them all that they have planned to do? Come, let us descend and confuse their language, so that one will not understand the language of his companion. And the Lord scattered them from there upon the face of the entire earth, and they ceased building the city.
Very nice, very simple. This is what's happening. This is the natural situation when God is appearing. Now, we already explained last week, we saw that it's not written down what exactly was their sin. And the maximum that we can see that is hinted here is that they wanted to do something against the will of God. But it's not saying that they did now a sin. If they will continue on only to live in one place, this is against the will of God. But what exactly was their sin? Because they were united, it's very important to realize that, because they were united, and God is saying it, nothing will stop them from doing or from managing to do whatever they wanted to do. Okay? Nothing will stop them. So it will appear in front of them. And when God is appearing in front of people, if they have no one to speak to lower this appearance,
Right.
so they are spreading out. And this is what happened. They lost the one language that is uniting them. They were spread all over this world. This is more or less what's happening now. The town is not demolished. The town is not being, thrown out, earthquake or something else that closed this town. The city is still there, but they stopped building it because people just spread over. And this is where we're calling this Babel. But again, we need to know that the name has been given a few years after that. But we understand also the meaning of the name. The meaning of the name in Hebrew, Babel, is to mix, And now God mixed all the languages in a sort of way that people stopped understanding one each other, and they were spread over because he appeared in front of all of them in his Almighty. Okay, in the negative side of the picture that will become in the parsha that we read yesterday in front of the Israeli people. One very important thing to show is, please read verse number, just a moment, verse number 3.
3, and they said to one another, "Come, let us make bricks and fire them thoroughly." So the bricks were to them for stones, and the clay was to them for mortar.
And when we said Ish el Reu, one to another, okay, let's see for a moment if we're managing to see who exactly spoke with whom. Please read the Rashi, only the first one, and they said one to each other.
And they said one to another, one nation to another nation, Mizram to Cush, and Cush to Put, and Put to Canaan.
All of them are the kids of Ham. Yes, Shem, Ham, and Nephet. Yes, Ham. These kids of Ham. Let's look for a moment. Who is the nation here? Mitzrayim. Mitzrayim is the Egyptians, right?
Right.
Exactly. Let's look
Can I
for
make
a
a
moment.
point, Rabbi?
Just a moment. Very important point, and then you can ask questions. Let's look for a moment what exactly the Egyptians did to the Hebrew people when they were supposed to work very hard, okay? Please read verses 7, 8, and 9.
7. You shall not continue to give stubble to the people to make bricks like yesterday and the day before yesterday. Let them go and gather stubble for themselves. But the number of the bricks that they have been making yesterday and the day before yesterday, you shall impose upon them. You shall not reduce it, for they are lax. Therefore, they cry out, saying, "Let us go and sacrifice to our God." Let the labor fall heavy upon the men, and let them work at it, and let them not talk about false matters.
Before we will speak about verse number 9, I want to say that we see again that they're speaking about the same competence. They're speaking about the same things, bricks, matkonet levenim, and all of the things that we spoke that Mitzrayim already did here. Again, we're speaking about some sort of a negative picture that will, after that, will become to a story that is managing in the history. Here, he didn't manage it. It's only the beginning, but they didn't manage to do it in the right way. But it's very similar to what will happen later on with the Hebrew people. One more point that I will say, if you already spoke about this verse, that this is one of the ways that the Yetzer Hara, okay, the thing that is holding us, doing to us all the time. It says all the time, let the labor fall heavy upon the men and let them work hard, work at it. Okay, so all the time I'm busy with other things. Now think for a moment. Today we have a device. Remember this device. This is some sort of a computer, very small computer. But people are going with this also to the toilets. People are going with this everywhere. So what is happening to them? They have no time to speak with themselves. And this is exactly what Pharaoh is saying here. I will bring on them more and more things, and they won't speak with me about going out from Egypt. False things. So we need to know also to put, all those devices and everything else, and to have an hour a day with ourselves, to speak with ourselves, to do some sort of, thinking about the things that we did today, what are good, what are bad, what we want to change, what we want to stay with us, to live with us. But this is, by the way, I spoke about this. More I wanted to show that what happened here with the Egyptians and then the Hebrew people that went out from Egypt is some sort of a negative story that happened already in the Babylon story. And in the Babylon story, we see also the same things, the same elements that we have in the Babylon story. But in the Babylon story, the outcome of it, that all of the people were spread over. In the Israeli story, after 400, 500 years, something like that, 450 years, if I will be exact, it's something that is managing to become a nation that will be the light for the others. But we started, it's some sort of a try that the humanity tried already in this chapter. This is what I wanted to show today. Yes, questions till now. Fine.
Well, Rabbi, I just wanted to continue because of that verse 3 where they said to one another, and the way Rashi puts it, between nations. I brought up a point last week, but I think, when it starts out in verse 1, the entire earth was of one language and uniform words, there's something specific going on there. And like I mentioned last week, studying the origins of writing in general, the archaeological, tangible, physical dawn of writing in history. And anybody can go through history and get back to the order. We have to see the purpose for why writing began in general. Never mind the oral tradition, but why did writing begin in general? And the answer is here. They were of one language and uniform words, and writing began as a way of counting what one owned. It became tablets eventually based on ownership. And it was the only reason writing had first begun, to say that I own this much cattle, I own that much cattle, and somebody owned this much of that or that much land. And the reality was they all came together with one language, meaning, I think, writing and uniform words, speech, and they were coming together from all these nations, and they were trying to build at that time, and this is what wouldn't have been withheld if they weren't scattered. At that period, they would have built something likened unto what was the World Trade Centers. They wanted to have something so they wouldn't be scattered abroad, and if they had a trade center where they agreed on what the value and worth of everything was, they wouldn't be scattered abroad. And this, at that time, Hashem did not want, and it was scattered. And I believe that it's all there in the text and in the actual tangible archaeological history. But the great news is that the Hebrew people have preserved all this, and it's still there to be balanced and accounted for with actual tangible history. And my joy is full just to see it come to light. We have saw, in 2001, the destruction of the World Trade Center in New York City, the Twin Towers, when they went down, and what that caused is a big transition and a change. But more so, I think that people need to see how it affects the human heart in an incorrect light. And it makes the value of the oral Torah that much more to the rest of the world. I hope my point's
No,
clear.
I understand what you're saying. It's a very nice point. Very nice, very good point with what you're saying also. And it's also related to the science side. So I can't, I never said anything that is against the science side. I think that we spoke about this also a few times, about the connection between the science side and the Torah. There are more meanings, but this is enough for tonight. This is enough for now. I have, if people have questions about things that we spoke about, this is the time. We have a few minutes for questions, and then we will continue on for the Lee part. Yes. So someone wanted to ask before, and I stopped him. So first of all, I apologize, but this is the time. If they didn't answer, it's okay.
Hello, Rabbi. I have a question.
Yes.
In our prayers, we pray when we bring back your captivity before your eyes, you're talking to the Israeli nation. You will be exalted when we bring back the captivity before your eyes. And that is for the time of Messiah, right? And it's what does it mean that the nations will be made slaves as the Israelites were, so that we understand what the Israelites went through?
No. I don't think that all of the nations are going to be slaves or something like that. Not at all. It says that I will say more than that. If you ask the inside part of the inheritance, they will tell you that all of the nations will become Israel, and the Israel will become the priest. Okay, everybody will move one step ahead. It's not that people are going to become slaves. It's more that people will acknowledge what is happening now. Today, the Hebrew people are feeling like slaves in front of God. If you will go to the general, I will say, I'm speaking very, because we are on the internet, so I want to be very careful with my words. But if you will go to the general Christian world, they don't feel like slaves of God. They feel like they need to give God some sort of a portion once a week, an hour, 2 hours, not more than that. If you go to the Muslim world, they do feel like slaves in front of God, not exactly slaves, but more like something that are demolishing in front of God. They're nothing in front of God. Okay, and those who are against God, they need to do everything, to kill them, to burn them, to do everything that they can do. But what is exactly the relationship between men and God? The Hebrew people are preserving something, and I can show this inside the verses in Psalms, and I can show this also inside the verses of the. I'll show this for a moment. Let me share with you for a moment the screen again. I will show you something with Moses. Okay, just a moment. In front of God, not exactly something with Moses, but it says with Moses. And also in the Mishnah, in our oral Bible, we also say we understand the relationship between men and God, that this is related very much to humility. What exactly is humility? This is something that we need to learn. Okay. No, not this one. Sorry, the chapter before that. Look for a moment what Moses is speaking, or how Moses is speaking about him. I'm speaking about Moses. Think for a moment. This man did the 10 punishment to the Egyptians, and he also did this big miracle of the Dead Sea. Okay, the sea where all of the Hebrew people passed over, and suddenly they're asking, please read verse number 2.
2. The entire community of the children of Israel complained against Moses and against Aaron in the desert.
Okay, because they said we don't have food. And please read the answer that Moses is giving them.
And in the morning you shall see the glory of the Lord when he hears your complaints against the Lord. But of what significance are we that you make the people complain against us?
Okay, what significant are we? In Hebrew, it says we are. It says in a much more positive way, we are nothing. We are only the channel that God is speaking with all of you through us, but we are nothing. We are nothing. This is some sort of how exactly the relationship between man and God, and what the meaning of this, where we're praying and all of those things, is that at the end of days, or what is happening now, that people will start to realize the exact relationship between God and man. This is the main thing.
Okay, so what I gathered is what you're telling me is that the Israeli nation will be exalted when they understand and humble themselves. You are already a humble nation, but when we understand the humility of Israel, we will extol you and put you up on that pedestal where you're supposed to be, is what I'm gathering. So it's through humility that we are elevated.
Exactly. The humility is a very important thing, and this is the first step for everything. And you can see it also in the Mesilat Yesharim. People ask me what we need to learn first, what we need to learn after that. The Mesilat Yesharim is a very important book to start to learn all the books of the what we call Musar. I think that we need to be careful because you might find yourself with a very איך אומרים את זה לי, מאוד מריר.
Distorted?
מה, ההסתכלות מרירה?
כן, הסתכלות מרירה.
Yeah, you could develop a negative outlook.
Not only negative is a very soft word. You learn all the Musar.
Bitter.
Oh, exactly. You will become a bitter person. You know, it's very. Those are not the books to start with. You start with the Mesilat Yesharim. But in the beginning of Mesilat Yesharim, it speaks about humility. And then in another chapter, it speaks again about humility in another level. Okay, so this Mesilat Yesharim is a very important book. To learn from this. It's because even before the Tanya. Sorry, I know that you learned the Tanya very much. But it's okay. To know the Tanya is very good. But Mesilat Yesharim is before that. And we need to learn the exact humility to understand.
How to nullify ourselves and give ourselves over to understand that we're nothing in comparison. And I think that our arrogance as humanity, as coming to one, all the nations coming together, is what it's saying, that there's no humility. There was no humility. There was arrogance in everything that they done, is why he came down to the tower.
This is part of the thing, exactly.
Okay. Thank you, Rabbi. Thank you.
Not a problem. Fine.
We have a couple of questions from Michaela. One is about the Midrash.
Michaela always is giving us a lot of questions.
Very good. So one is about the Midrash, which talks about God offering the Torah to the nations and them refusing it, and then the Hebrew people accepting it. And she's asking if this interpretation has anything to do with Genesis chapter 11.
It's hard to say. The Midrash is especially speaking mainly about what is happening in Exodus, not what is happening in Genesis. But we do see along history a few times. By the way, chapter 11 is one time, but we had even, I won't go inside too much to this. We do see in few times that God is trying all sorts of ways to bring his Torah to the nations, and they are rejecting it. One of the places is chapter 11. The Midrash is much more particular for Exodus, and we need to learn this Midrash. It's a very interesting Midrash. It's an amazing Midrash, but we're not going to do this now. If you will, you know what, maybe tomorrow when we're going to speak a few minutes, I will also speak with you about this Midrash. Okay, fine.
And the other question is more general, but it's a recommendation on which writings from the oral Torah that you recommend, and in which order.
So I think that first of all, on I will answer that, but it's very hard to answer because you need also not only to read those books, but also to listen a bit to what we have to say about those books. Those are two different levels. To read them, it's very important, and you're getting a lot. To learn a bit what we have, a bit more than what's written down, it's much more, upper level. In the back of the prayer book, there are a few small books that we added to the English version. Okay, you will find there the Kuzari, part 1 from 5 parts. You will find there the Maimonides, that in the before he is explaining Masechet Avot. Masechet Avot also. Okay, those are the main things there that we put there. I'm adding here also Mesilat Yesharim. Now, if you wait for a moment, I will open my notebook and I will give you now another 10 books. But from the whole, I started with something. One of the things that we are doing now, we are preparing few courses, okay, in English. Sorry, Michael, in English. I know that your community wants very much to move them also to the Italian language. We will do that, we will manage. But we're preparing some courses that we think that are very important courses. So people will be able to get more, I will say, not only inspiration, but the foundations of things. The truth is that in our vision, and I wrote it down, and we started to speak with people also to try to find the funds of doing this, is to have in Jerusalem. In Jerusalem, it's very important, I think, to have there a place where people can come for a month or even month and a half to do a tour in Israel, but a normal tour, not only for places, but to meet people, unique people, to meet places, very important places, and also to learn those main issues. So when all of those who will come for something like that will be able to become leaders in their places. Okay, and I will say another secret, and thank you, Lisette, for joining us. We have another thing that happened lately in the internet is the question about the schools for kids. So 4 months ago, something like that, one of the people in the places where they're speaking Spanish, okay, in South America, she was very frustrated from the schools in her place, and she decided to open a small, homeschool for her kids. She had 2 or 3 kids, I don't know exactly, 2 or 3. It was 4 months ago, and she has today, I think, something like between 400 and 500 kids, right, Lisette?
Wow.
Lisette is going to help us also there. So it's something similar to what we have in India. So we're trying to build up to all the system and everything else, and hopefully we will manage that from Jerusalem, the words of God will go out to all of the world.
Awesome.
Like
Rabbi, have you got time for a question
like
online?
it says in the prophets. What?
Have you got time for a question from YouTube?
Yes.
Okay. Our friend Cole Younger is on YouTube watching, along with many people in Germany and a few other places. But Cole says he understands that there were a multitude of people who followed Bnei Israel into the Exodus out of Egypt. He says his question is this: how did they survive the plagues, especially the plague of the death of the firstborn? He says, did they put blood on the lintels of their doors, or were they in another way with the children of Israel and passed over by the angel of death?
I said it before that those people just followed Moses because he was the main, I would say, magician in this area. After everything, after all of this, all those 10 punishments finished and everything else, there was a very big group from the Egyptians who decided to follow the Hebrew nation. They said the history will continue with the Hebrew nation, not with the Egyptians. And they followed the Hebrew people. After everything, when need to know that there were people like that were very. It's written down also in the Bible that Moses was very high rank person in Egypt. To come there and to stand in front of Pharaoh and to say to him, you know what, you will get this punishment, you will get this punishment. 10 times, people really admired Moses and they followed him. The problem is that they followed Moses and tried very much to become only on the side of the ritual side of the behaving, in front of God. The Israeli people went out towards Israel, towards Israel land, because this is what their forefather told them, that they will go back to Israel. And we have since then two main, I would say, streams inside the Hebrew nation. Those who want very much only to behave in a ritual way, as a religious people, and those who understand that they're supposed to go back to Israel. And this is also what we see today. I'm very careful with my words. I won't go inside to this much more. Think about what I said, and now we can start to think, because you're all the time asking yourself about rabbis, and who are the main rabbis, to who to listen and everything else. Now I said here very important point to start to open your eyes. I think I spoke too much today. Lee, take over. I said it's something that I never thought that I'm going to speak about with the Noachide people, but never mind. I said it.
Thank you, Rabbi Chaim. I'll say a Shavua Tov, a good week to everybody. Start off as we did in past weeks. I missed the first couple of minutes, but we'll wish a full and speedy recovery to Rabbi Chaim's parents, and wishing health and fulfillment to you all from here in Israel. I wanted to do a quick recap of where we're holding in Brit Shalom. I'll share my screen here. There we go. Okay. So based on the way I divvied things up in the chapters, we covered the foundation, the introduction, who are Noahides, some fundamental principles, who does the Noahide law apply to, when, etc., core beliefs. We spoke about idolatry, things that are permissible for Noahides, things that are forbidden, in manner of also in belief, but also in practice. And then we're basically rounding up here, chapter 4, laws of blessing God as a euphemism, which included blasphemy, cursing God, hearing others curse, the name of heaven, etc. We're wrapping that up, and then we'll move on to the section which is kind of more down to earth, so to speak. It's man and fellow. Starting off with human, the sanctity of human life, the family, etc. So, as I mentioned in past weeks, I urge you all to get either a physical or a digital copy of Brit Shalom to review what we've been learning so far. It's quite a lot of content. I'm sure you can make notes for yourself, and questions will arise. As we said in the past, there's the Q&A section on the website that we want to get more active. For your own benefit, and also for people, for the benefit of people in the future. I personally benefited from that as well. Some great questions, so keep them coming. Okay, this is chapter 5. Great. So we're wrapping up here in chapter 4. Again, blasphemy, and then on the positive side, blessing God. Okay, we spoke about blessing God certainly in situations which are obviously good, and also finding the resolve and the steadfastness to maintain hope in God's goodness, even in times of struggle. Obviously, a very difficult thing to do, but a very tall order that the Torah demands. We spoke about identifying with a blessing. Here, I'm reading here in clause 16. Okay, so answering amen. Again, amen is kind of the affirmative. I too believe in what you're saying. I affirm. As they say, I'm Lee and I approve of this message, right? So we say amen when we hear a blessing. Okay, and then we spoke last time, the last clause here, about the wonderful custom. Here we're in the section about what Rabbi Sherky calls as proper conduct, things that may not necessarily be required to the letter of the law, but which are a very strong suggestion and recommendation for people to adhere to. Okay, so we spoke about the wonderful custom of waking up in the morning and offering this prayer to God for another day of the gift of life, and how His faith in us to use that gift is tremendous, knows no bounds. Starting off the day, and as I spoke about previously, certainly in difficult times, starting off the day with that mindset is a totally different outlook. Okay, so just wrapping up chapter 4 here. The finest, most exalted here in clause 18. Is the text large enough? Can somebody nod their head or say yes? Yes, thanks, Angela and Mike. Okay, so the finest, most exalted blessing is the one recited over food, eaten with bread at the completion of a meal, and it's called grace after meals. And as written here, the exact formulation of the blessing for Noahides can be found in Brit Olam, in the prayer book. Okay, there's a special obligation to preserve the wholeness of the world of the Holy One, blessed be He, as the Midrash says, everything I created for you. Be diligent not to degrade or destroy my world. Therefore, it was prohibited for Jews to destroy or disfigure any plant, animal, or human being for no good reason. This prohibition is called do not destroy, bal tashchit in Hebrew. Do not destroy. And it is fitting for every human being to behave in this manner. Okay, so you can include in this protecting the environment. You can include in this, just the cleaning up after yourself. You found, a mess in your neighborhood or so, going with one's kids and cleaning up bottles off the street, etc. And certainly, maintaining the great gift of the world that God's given us. Okay. So that wrapped up chapter 4, and moving on to the preservation of human life, the sanctity of human life, also talking about the prohibition against murder, etc. Okay, we start off with a couple of verses. Whoever spills the blood of a human being, coming from Genesis, whoever spills the blood of a human being, through a human being, his own blood shall be spilled. For in the image of God, He made the human being. Okay, and this talks about basically the punishment against the person who took life, getting a proper punishment for this. Okay, and clearly in the Ten Commandments, thou shalt not murder. Okay, it starts off with some general principles and gets down into the practical. Rabbi Akiva said, a human being is precious since he is created in the image of God. Okay, this comes from Pirkei Avot, Masechet Avot, that Rabbi Chaim mentioned previously. In the English, it's translated as Ethics of the Fathers. You can find on the Chabad website the Hebrew-English parallel. I'm sure you can find some wonderful commentaries as well in the English. As I've said in the past, also sefaria.org has a wonderful compendium of commentaries on this and virtually the entire Jewish library. So a human being is precious since he is created in the image of God. There's a number of things that I wanted to unpack here in these first two statements. Okay, so obviously underscoring the sanctity of human life. This is also talking about human beings. Okay, this has nothing to do with Jews, non-Jews. This is talking about human beings, all of mankind being precious to God. And where does this preciousness come from? It comes from mankind being created in the image of God. And we spoke about this in the past. It bears some repeating. We talked about the capacity for wisdom and the capacity for free will. Okay, this is one of the central commentaries, central explanations, interpretations of being created in the image of God. Obviously, it's not the physical image of God. God doesn't have an image. But this image being like, how do we resemble God? Okay, so just as He is free in His will, so too He gave us a will which is free to choose between good and evil. And when we do this, when we exercise our free will, and when we connect, when we learn, when we increase in wisdom, we are bringing to fruition this image of God. And conversely, when we're not, when we victimize ourselves, when we say, the forces that kind of set my behavior are, as they say, nature or nurture. Nature, like, I have certain inclinations. It's very easy for me to get angry. Or nurture, I was raised in a bad house and therefore I act evil. So when we shirk, when we reject this responsibility, we are diminishing this image of God. Okay, so we're speaking about here the universal preciousness of human life and being created in the image of God. Nevertheless, I did want to mention that while human life is of virtually utmost sanctity, of utmost holiness, right? The Torah, Judaism is a very it has to be looked at it in the big picture, and in the grander scheme, human life, while being virtually number one, there are certain things that also supersede human life. Okay, as we spoke about the prohibition against murder. So if somebody, God forbid, has a person at gunpoint, it says, either just heard a terrible story, which is virtually straight out of our sources. Okay, a person says, either kill this person or I'm going to kill you. So the Torah commands for all of mankind, Noahides and Jews alike, that a person should let himself be killed in such a situation. Okay, so there are certain things that nevertheless we have a michlol, we have a larger picture of values that we need to uphold, and it's true that human life is incredibly high, or if you'll a ladder, whichever picture you like, it's true that human life is incredibly high on this ladder, but it's also true that there is tzedek, that justice is also a holy value, and there are times when also life needs to be taken, and this is part of the Torah's value system. Obviously, this is another point that I wanted to stress, is that even when life needs to be taken, even when we need to go out and we are commanded to either defend ourselves or to diminish the enemy, we don't want to acquire in ourselves the feeling like, yes, I'm bloodthirst. I'm so happy for having killed my enemy. Because at the end of the day, it says that God does not desire for the evil to die. What God desires is for mankind to choose him and to bring to fruition the image of God, to repent and to get closer to him. This is what we actually desire. So it's a very, very fine line when we go out and we actually need to end life. We need to be happy about bringing justice into the world and upholding the Torah value system. We nevertheless are trying very carefully not to acquire this sense of bloodthirst. Like I'm happy that this human being died. Okay, it's a very, very fine line. And I mentioned these things. Yes, Rabbi Chaim.
Just a moment. There is a very important question here that Rabbi is asking. Who exactly we need to love? Okay, is it apply to love all humans, or only in your community, and everything else? The truth is that it's very, very easy to love people that are very far away from us. It's much harder to love the people, that in our community, because he's really annoying me. This one next to me, my neighbor, is annoying me. The one who is living, there, up there, somewhere, I don't know where, it's very nice to love him. Every person in our world have the image of God in himself. Therefore, we need to respect him. We need to love him. Now, let me tell you more than that. Everything that is in our world, God created. Therefore, in the Hebrew tradition, and it's written down also in this book, in Brit book, it's not allowed to annoy animals just for the fun. And it's not allowed to destroy trees just for the fun. And it's not allowed to unrespect anything in this world just for your fun. You need to have honor to everything in this world, because everything God created. And of course, if you're trying to value, so it's more important to respect the animals than to respect the trees. And it's more important to respect person, okay, a live person, instead of respecting the animals. If it's coming in a contradiction, okay? If there is, I will say like that, if there is, God forbid, you see some sort of a car accident, and there is a dog there, that almost died. And also a person, go and treat the person before you're treating the dog. Because there is, the values, you need to be with the right values. But if the guy or the person there is not armed, and the dog is on the way to get killed or to die, or is suffering, help him, because also the dog is something that God created. So it's applying to everything. It's applying to everybody.
Thank you, Rabbi Chaim. I think Travis was commenting on clause 2. We'll speak about it a little bit more. I'll clarify a little bit more. I'll add on to what you're saying. Some of the clauses later on in chapter 5 will deal exactly with what you just said. If I will, I'll coin the term that the Torah espouses, teaches an extreme sense of monotheism. Like monotheism to the fullest degree. Not only that monotheism, meaning there is one God, but that God is the creator of all, and therefore there is a sense of harmony and unity with all of creation. And as Rabbi Chaim said, it's true that there are levels in creation, and there are creatures that bring into fruition God's will in an easier fashion or in a more powerful fashion than others. But God created the entire world, and therefore His unity, His will, is expressed through the entire creation. Fine. So on verse 2, I wanted briefly to. Fine. I think I was going to mention something else about verse 1, but I think I'll skip it now. Okay. So on clause 2, Rabbi Akiva said, "And you shall love your fellow as yourself. This is a great Torah principle." Okay. Also, again, coming from Mishnah in Pirkei Avot. The verse comes from Leviticus. We'll look at the verse briefly. Okay, and Travis had a good question about this. Okay, so I wanted to look briefly at the context of the verse. Okay, it's coming from Leviticus chapter 19. Okay, and in chapter 19, this portion of the Torah, it's talking about Kedushim, right? It's talking about how to acquire holiness. Okay, so there's many commandments here. They're talking about one's dealing with his fellow man. Okay, so it talks here about hating one's brother. Okay, I'm reading here in verse 17. "Thou shalt not hate thy brother in thy heart. Thou shalt surely rebuke thy neighbor and not bear sin because of him." Okay, the following verse, "Thou shalt not take vengeance, nor bear any grudge against the children of thy people, but thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. I am the Lord." Okay, so there's a number of things here. Verse 17, again, it's talking about things which are which bear obviously a lot of commentary. Okay, but the context here of verse 18 is one of the main commentaries talking about this mitzvah, about loving the neighbor as thyself, points out the verse needs to be, or the phrase needs to be taken in its context. Okay, so the statement as it appears in the Talmud, in the Tractate of Shabbat, okay, the oral tradition explains this verse actually in the negative. It says, "What is hateful to you, don't do to other people." There's somebody with the microphone open. If I can ask you all to mute in the meantime. Thank you. Okay, and so the oral tradition in the Talmud explains this phrase actually in the negative. And one of the commentaries that I read about this explanation is in contrast to I think this phrase I saw actually some sort of research that this phrasing about loving thy neighbor appears in a vast number of traditions, in the Christian tradition, in Buddhist, Hindu, etc. And it's very, very often presented in the positive. Okay, as it is presented here in the text itself. Okay, "Thou shalt love thy neighbor" in the positive, but the oral tradition explains it actually in the negative. And the explanation that I saw about explaining it, interpreting it in the negative, is because trying to love to the utmost somebody else as you love yourself is always to a degree going to be lacking. And so what we can hope to do is to not to cause others pain, not to do, okay, as the oral tradition explains, not to do this certainly we can achieve, to truly to the fullest extent try to embody this in the positive is something incredibly far to be achieved. I think Travis was asking about who exactly this applies to. I think there are varying traditions, varying opinions in our tradition, but I think that this applies also as Rabbi Akiva is saying. This is a great Torah principle. This is applying to humanity. This is applying to loving all of your neighbors as thyself. Another point that's made in interpreting this verse is ve'ahavta le're'acha kamocha. You should love the neighbor as you love yourself. And so it stresses here that in order to be able to love somebody else, you have to love yourself. You have to have a positive image of yourself. So this is a prerequisite to being actually able to step outside. Okay, so these are some points that I wanted to raise. I think there was something else, but it slips my mind. Okay. Oh, there was another point Rabbi Shirky brings in the name of his rabbi, Rabbi Ashkenazi. Okay, it says here in the Hebrew, the translation here is, this is a great Torah principle. The Hebrew says ze klal gadol b'Torah. Okay, which can literally be translated as, this is a great Torah principle. But the way Rabbi Ashkenazi interpreted it is ze klal. This is a principle, of one who is great in Torah. Meaning, if you want to have a yardstick to see who is a great sage in Torah, look at how he behaves with other people, and this is a good measure.
Another question. First of all, thank you very much. You said it in a very exact way. And another very interesting question that Michael is asking: what is the difference in principle between a negative mitzvah and a positive mitzvah? A negative mitzvah is something that you are not doing. Okay, you're stopping. You prefer not to do. I don't want to harm anyone, but I'm not doing anything positive with myself. I'm not standing up and doing something actively. Okay, a lot of people, for example, if you look on the main basic of the 7 laws of the Noachide, it's all what not to do. Don't steal, don't kill. Normal person started to ask us, but I want to get closer to God. I want to do actions. I want to do something. Okay, if I will ask you or everybody else, with your husband, with your spouse, okay, you would never want to be only on the side of not doing things. When I love someone, I want to bring him flowers. I want to do things that he will feel good. I want to do actions to show my kindness, my love to him. And the same thing with God. With God, there are things that we are not doing, okay? We have some sort of fear from God. We don't want to interfere and to do things that against his will. But on the other side, there are a lot of things that we want to do that he will feel good with us, and that we're showing that we want to be part, just like the people that we love with. So we have those two things. If you will go inside to this in much more deeper way, profound way, we ourselves also have those two things in our body, okay? There's the side that is giving us fear, and there's also the side that is giving us a lot of love. And we need both of them all the time. So we can't stay only with one side. We need all the time to have those two scales to live in the right way.
Thank you. Okay, so מצוין. This is great. Please fire away with the questions. It's causing us to learn as well, as you can see. Okay, so we spoke about the first 2 clauses. As I mentioned, they bear some explanation. Okay, the sanctity of life, but they're nevertheless life being part of a greater set of values. Okay, and loving the neighbor, and not doing to others what is hateful, what we find hateful in our own eyes. Okay. Clause 3. The life of a human being was given by God, and no one has the authority to nullify it. Therefore, whoever takes someone else's life or his own violates a commandment of the Creator, and the punishment of a murderer is execution by court. Okay, it's like chad v'chalak. It's black and white. Life is incredibly, incredibly holy, and it is basically number 2, if you will, on the right, with number 1 being these other exceptions in which life we will also even end life in order to uphold the values, but is virtually number one in the totem pole. The prohibition of murder applies to an act committed directly, indirectly, or by an agent. Okay, so you'll have to use your imagination what this means. We'll discuss a little bit further here, also euthanasia. Okay, even though the punishment of execution by a court is reserved for someone who murders directly, someone who murders indirectly is still a murderer, and his sentence is determined in heaven. Okay, so this whole chapter is underscore this point. I think it's quite clear. Nevertheless, I'll as a side point, I'll mention that one of the questions raised by Rabbi Saadia Gaon, one of the Geonim in the latter part of the first millennium, asks about if humankind could have reached the wisdom of the Torah on its own, and why we needed kind of God to interject, if you will, in human history in giving over the Torah. And he's one of the explanations given, I think it's also brought in Sefer HaKuzari, the Kuzari book, which Rabbi Chaim mentioned, and I think it should be found again on Sefaria, but I'll also pull a plug or mention a plug for the Art Scroll publisher. They have wonderful English renditions of these books with commentaries. In any event, so it's mentioned also in Rabbi Saadia Gaon and also in the Kuzari that there may be certain values which mankind could have approached in a general sense, but that many details would have been lost. Exactly what to do in this situation, certain measurements, the fine details of the laws would have taken an incredibly long time for humanity to arrive at. And in the meantime, a lot of destruction would have come forth. And I think that here, talking about the sanctity of life, and I think we'll see other examples of this, talks about some of these fine lines, where only using human logic may have brought us to different conclusions. Okay, you're talking about the authority of a government. A national government may exact punishment even for a murder that does not require punishment according to the letter of the law. Okay, talking about the law and order of civilization. There's also a statement in the Ethics of the Fathers, fundamental piece, highly recommended. It says there, Have mitpalel bishloma shel malchut. One should pray for the government to stay intact. She'ilmele mora'ah, ish et re'ehu balau. Basically, man and his fellow will eat themselves up. So there's actually prayers said in the synagogues. I'm not sure if it's brought in Brit Olam, talking about and we recently saw an example of this actually in the UAE. There was a wonderful video going out of in the synagogue there, them praying for the protection of the government. My father also reads this in his synagogue in New York, talking about the American government, etc. Okay, so praying for law and order and the authority of a government to end life, to keep things in order, even above the letter of the law. Okay, number 6, I think bears being read in conjunction with clause 7. So I'll try to zoom out. I don't know if I'll zoom out. There's a lot of commentary here, but anyway, we'll read it and you'll bear with me. Okay, included in the prohibition of murder is an abortion of fetuses and mercy killing. Okay, so just bear with me. We'll read it with number 7. Nevertheless, there are cases where abortion of a fetus is permitted, especially during the first 40 days of pregnancy and or if the life of the mother is in danger. Where such issues arise, a rabbi who's familiar with them should be consulted. Okay, so again, you see here the utmost holiness of life and wanting to protect life, and there being no question about that. Nevertheless, we need to look at life and the sanctity of it in the grander scheme of things. And there are cases, unfortunately, in which a pregnancy endangers the life of the mother, and somebody knowledgeable in these cases needs to be consulted but there are in fact cases where it would be permissible. Okay, speaking about euthanasia and ending life, it is forbidden to actively end the life of someone suffering of a disease, but it is not necessary to fight to keep him alive. It's actually a question I asked myself over the past couple of years. I saw some articles in the Times of Israel, one publication here, talking about this matter and asking the rabbi about it, and he mentioned the same thing. Unfortunately, certain treatments, certain medications are incredibly costly and come at a tremendous cost to the family to keep the person alive. Very, very difficult situations. And again, one needs to consult, as Rabbi Shirky will mention here later in Clause 9, with basically to get as many medical opinions as possible, to consult with one's rabbi and sage in such situations, God forbid. Okay, so just rereading here, Clause 8, it is forbidden to actively end the life of someone suffering from a disease, but it is not necessary to fight to keep him alive. Administering medication to lessen the pain is permitted as long as it is not a direct cause of death. The moment death is ascertained, it is permitted to disconnect life support systems. And Rabbi Shirky here will briefly touch also further down about organ donation. The reason I mention it is because there's in order to donate organs, the person can't still be technically alive, and so the moment death being ascertained is very important. Number 9, even in situations where it is permitted, according to the letter of the law, to discontinue treatment of a patient near death, it remains forbidden until the moment of death to disconnect any life support system or respirator, or to withhold any food or drink. In any situation where doubt arises, 3 people should be consulted: the patient insofar as he is able to participate in the discussion, the doctor, and a rabbi. And it was told to me in a far less severe circumstance, and I'm sure that it would be applicable here as well, but that multiple medical opinions would be a mitzvah, would be a commandment, would be a very wise thing to do. Again, God should save us from such difficult circumstances. Okay, talking about organ donation. These are all like bombshell clauses here, so I urge you to go back and to review them and to send in questions.
Lee, just a moment. I need to apologize. I need to go. I'm going to put you the host. Okay, and also we have a that will help you. That Dan will help you also. Okay. Yes. I want to thank everybody for being here today. I'm sorry that I need to go. There are a few very good questions on the question board. Okay, so deal with them, and if not, we'll deal with them in the next weeks maximum. Okay. Thank you, everybody. I'm sorry. I need to go.
Great. Thank you, Rabbi Chaim.
Bye. Have a great week, everybody.
Shavua Tov.
Shavua Tov.
All right. Yeah, I see some great questions here, so we'll get to them in a couple of minutes. I see it's already close to 9:20, so we'll do only maybe 1 or 2 more clauses, and then we'll move to questions. Okay, speaking about organ donation, Clause 10, removal of organs from a dead person for transplant purposes after cessation of heart activity or brain death. Okay, and this goes back to ascertaining the moment of death, because doing it even 1 moment earlier would effectively be actively killing the person. Okay, it would be forbidden. But the moment death is ascertained, we're saying here either after cessation of heart activity or brain death is permitted by law and even desirable. Okay, of course, if after the person is medically deceased, if there's any inkling of a chance to save another life with organs, this is a tremendously powerful deed. Donation of an organ, such as a kidney for transplant from a healthy person that does not endanger the donor, is permitted and even desirable. Okay, obviously underscoring here, not endangering oneself. Maybe a couple more here. They're I think, relatively, let's say, relatively straightforward. It's permissible for a doctor to perform surgery, even where risk is involved, if its purpose is to save the patient's life. Okay, you might be able to say, I'm actively involved in risking this person, but here, there's a chance in saving the person's life. Obviously, anybody involved in this field would want to consult with the rabbi beforehand for specific circumstances. Someone who kills by mistake because of carelessness is exempt from the death penalty. But if the one who killed by accident thought that murder was permissible, that person will in fact be punished for murder. It may be worthwhile mentioning here, the person is exempt from the death penalty, but we have the Talmudic statement which says, there are certain things that come into the world, and let's put it this way: blessings come into the world through righteous people, and bad things come into the world at the hands of not so righteous people. So a person, if God forbid, I'm not saying that God forbid somebody should kill another by mistake, but any sort of calamity, person needs to ask why this why this happened to me, or why did I cause this? Why would God put me in such a position? This is involved or related to the general concept of both repentance and cheshbon nefesh, taking account for one's deeds. I think we'll review this in later chapters. Maybe we'll just try to finish off the page, and I see here the chat flashing. So we'll stop it there at 15. Okay. Speaking about taking part in the military, it is permissible to participate in war as a soldier of the state, and it is permissible for a soldier about to be captured to kill himself if he suspects that his captors will torture him. Yeah, this is pretty intense. This is learned out. It's brought here in the commentaries from King Saul. That kind of fell on his sword. There's a difference of opinion in the commentaries, but going with the opinion that he effectively ended his life to prevent himself from being tortured. Yeah, pretty intense situations. I would not wish upon any of you. Anyone who is clause 15, anyone who is threatened that if he does not kill another person, he will be killed. It is not permitted to kill even at the expense of his own life. Okay, we spoke about this, the prohibition against murder, even at the cost of one's own life. Okay, I think we'll call it a day there. Again, a number of bombshell clauses here that have a tremendous amount of ramifications. So I urge you all to review them and send in questions. I'll stop sharing because it's not letting me to open the chat. Okay. Have a great week, everyone. Lara, thank you. And Shavua Tov, Matityahu. And thank you, Lucette. Okay, Netzach asks, if I hire somebody else to kill another person, God forbid, is it considered directly or indirectly by halakha? Thanks, I tend to think that it should be considered directly, but I am not sure. Toda. Again, incredibly difficult circumstance. I hope it should never be a practical question. But yeah, I think this, you're the direct cause of this person, even if it's being done by another agent. You're basically bringing it into action. Again, I hope it's not of any practical concern to you. If you need, if God forbid you need any sort of practical advice, you can send in a question to Rabbi Sherky.
Yeah, no, don't worry. It's not.
Okay, it was purely theoretical.
Indirectly and indirect in the text. So, yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Netzach. Okay, yes, the Brit Olam does. I think Tony was talking about one of the formulations of the blessings that we were talking about. So thank you, Tony. Okay, does the 40-day number connected to the 40 years in the desert before Israel passed through the Jordan to the land, meaning Israel's life began then? I think we spoke about this, Travis, regarding the number 40 and having it relate also to the flood, also to the number of years in the desert, the number of the quantity of units of water in the mikveh, in the ritual bath, etc., etc. The number 40 effectively resembling purity, undergoing some transformation of purity in receiving, it being connected to life. I guess is a good question. I mean, I guess it could be taking a stab here, but the very act of procreation, at least up until modern day, involved, unfortunately, a lot of death, a lot of miscarriage, or a lot of unsuccessful births, and this stage basically. I'm just taking a stab here in the dark. So it's a great question. I can try to dig in a little bit.
You really don't have to, Rabbi, if you don't want to. My thing is that we keep coming up with the number 40. It's a very prominent number throughout all of the Torah and all of the prophets. And it seems to me that there's a connection to the beginning of birth at 40. At the number 40, it's kind of like the splitting of the waters at the Red Sea. It's a shadow picture, or it's a expression of life coming through the birth canal with water, and it's a purifying, it's cleansing. It's like the mikveh, like we're born there and we're pure. And is that when 40 days is when we consider the soul attached to the flesh? That was basically the question.
Yeah, I don't have a good answer for you.
Right. There's a lot there to unpack, and I'm sorry for getting too deep here, but numbers just really amaze me, and when I come across them, and we know that we get messages through the numbers. So I was just trying to sneak in some secrets, man.
I appreciate Travis, Michael. We have some you say big hitters every week with great questions. So please keep them coming, and I'll stay honest and say I don't know. It's a good thing for a person to teach himself, to say I don't have an answer, and I can do my homework. Again, I've heard the tradition about Mount Sinai, 40 days and 40 years in the desert, and within the waters of Noah, purifying. How it connects specifically with the beginning of life is a great question. I haven't pondered, so I'll look into it. Masada. I don't know what you mean.
I wanted to hear the Masada question, because I see somebody put it out there. I mean, when you were talking about the prohibition against killing yourself, but you'd mentioned about King Saul, and then somebody put up the point about Masada, where the Hebrew people, where the Romans were attacking, and they were squeezed out of Jerusalem. I believe it was closer towards the Bar Kokhba era, but then they all ran off the hill there in Masada. I'm sure you're familiar with the history. I wanted to hear your response on that one, Lee.
Again, have to do my homework. So thank you, and I'll try to give you an educated response. I don't want to give you an uneducated response.
Who was it that asked that question?
I saw it from Matityahu.
Beautiful.
Okay. Any other questions about what we learned today? I can either try to take a stab, or I can pass on.
No, well, if we're going to wind it down, we've had a good group online, Facebook and on YouTube. We got people, newcomers popping in from places like Myrtle Beach, North Carolina or South Carolina, and North Dakota, all over North America as well. I just want to encourage everybody. Lee's been reading Rabbi Shirky's Brit Shalom, which some might say is a covenant of peace. But it is a practical application for Noahides, and it's not very large. You can see how thick that is, but the words are powerful. They're clear. They're concise. They're well thought out, coming from Rabbi Uri Cherky, of the founder of the Noahide World Center. And it's just always a joy to be with Lee, with Rabbi Chaim Goldberg, and everybody else from around the planet. And we encourage, so Hashem willing, Lee, are we still on for next week, Hashem willing?
I believe so. I'll do my best to be here. I believe the same will be true of Rabbi Chaim, unless he mentioned otherwise.
All right. So there you go, folks. You have it. We're going to tune out for now for everybody online.